We're continuing our series on quick, easy, simple things you can change to make yourself healthier. I'm Mindy Turner with the New Mexico State University Cooperative Extension Service, your family and consumer science agent in Curry County. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about sodium, or as we like to call it, plain old salt, and how maybe we can cut back on a little bit of that in our diets to help us feel better and better control certain types of health issues that we might have. The information I'm going to share with you today comes from our Kitchen Creations Diabetic Cooking School information. If that's a course you'd be interested in taking, we are going to be offering another one here just in the next few months. So please contact our office and let us know if you're interested so we can be sure that you get the information you need to sign up for that class. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about sodium. A lot of people who do have diabetes also might have high blood pressure. And sodium can be a contributing factor to high blood pressure. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is talk with your doctor about how much salt, how much sodium is a reasonable amount for you. They're going to be able to help you for your specific situation. Now, according to our dietary guidelines, less than 2,300 milligrams of sodium a day is what you want. And if you have any type of hypertension, high blood pressure, you're going to drop that down to about 1,500 milligrams a day. So what does that mean? We measure it in milligrams, we measure it in how much is on there. Well, so about a teaspoon of regular table salt is 2,400 milligrams. So that is more sodium than you should have in your regular daily allowance. So one of the ways that we can definitely cut back on our sodium intake is to put in less salt when we're cooking, and then of course less salt at the table that you're adding to your foods. Why is that a problem? Well, the biggest problem is we like salt. Salt enhances the flavor of the foods that we're cooking. It adds to that flavor. Most of us really like that salty taste. We crave it sometimes. So how do we cut that out of our diets? And again, it's not about cutting it out completely, but it's about making it a reasonable amount that's not going to affect your health in an adverse way. So like we said, the first thing that's really simple is just don't put the salt on the table. But what if we like that? Well, there are a lot of options for salt substitutes. Now, when we talk about substitutes, again, something you might want to discuss with your doctor. Some salt substitutes are made from different ingredients that may affect you depending on what your health concerns are. So think about what those, like you can see, this is light sodium. It's got light salt. It has 50% less sodium than regular salt. So there again, that's a viable alternative. One of the things we've also included in this month's newsletter are some recipes to make your own salt substitutes out of your different herbs and spices, which we're going to talk more about in just a minute. But one of them is as simple as just putting together some basil leaves and some garlic powder. And you're going to add that, mix it up, keep it in a salt shaker. You can add a lot of flavor to your food that way, and then you don't miss the salt so much, but you're not adding to your sodium intake. So those are some things that you want to think about. The big thing you're going to want to know for sodium is, hey, read the label. We talked about this a lot with serving sizes in our last video as well. Looking at that nutrition label, knowing what the content of your food is. A lot of processed food, a lot of our wonderful snacky foods that we really enjoy can be high in sodium. So that's something we definitely want to watch for. Now, obviously, we're going to think, okay, salty potato chips, they're going to have a lot of sodium. So we look on here, this again, one serving in this container. So we come down here and we find, hey, where's the sodium? 170 milligrams. Okay, now that doesn't sound too awful bad. When we come over here, we look and we say, okay, that's 7% of our daily allowance of what we can have for sodium. So that's going to be, if something is 5% or less, then they can label it low sodium. If it's 20% or more, that's considered a really high sodium. But again, remember, if this was a larger bag that had 2 servings in it, now we've gone from that 7% to 14%. So you have to consider not just what's in there, but how much of it you're eating. Okay, so now this is a granola bar, dark chocolate chunk granola bar. So when we look at that, most of the time we would go, that's probably not going to have much sodium in it. I mean, come on, it's a granola bar. It's the healthy choice. And it is a healthy choice because it's got some other additional nutrients and things that you're probably not going to get from the chips. But when we're talking about sodium, there's still 80 milligrams of sodium in this bar. Okay, so you're still looking at about 4% of your daily value. So that's, of course, low sodium because it's under that 5% mark. But it is added sodium that you need to be aware of, especially if that's something you're tracking, if you've talked with your doctor and you want to track that. So all of your little snacks, all of the items that you're keeping in your pantry just to grab out for a quick snack are going to have an effect on that. So again, that's where keeping, if you really need to monitor, if you're doing it for those health reasons, keep that food journal, keep that food diary, make a recording of what those things are. Now, again, in a lot of cases, we just know we need to feel better. We know we need to make some little adaptations, baby steps, as we've talked about throughout this series, of the little small things we can do to make ourselves healthier. And as I said, cutting back on sodium is one of those. So what are some things that contribute? Of course, when we talk about our canned goods, canned foods, we've talked several series. We've used canned foods in recipes. We've talked about keeping them stored properly. So again, one of the things you want to remember with these is you want to read this nutrition label. Make sure that you're aware what's in here. You can purchase some that will say no salt added. Of course, that's going to be less sodium than most things. These are actually, for this brand, they're actually printed little snippets here, little highlights on the front that you don't have to go as in-depth on the nutrition label, where it gives you that information. So it tells us right here, there are 300 milligrams of sodium. So 13% of your daily value, okay, in a serving. So there's the kicker right there. How many servings are in this can? Typically, if it's vegetables, we're not going to sit down and eat the entire can. But with a lot of other things, maybe it's a canned pasta or a canned soup, that we're going to eat the entire can. So it's important to remember that. So looking on here, 3.5 servings is how much is in this can. So even if I eat half of it, now I've got double, almost double what the sodium intake is. So just being aware of that. So what are some of the things, don't add additional salt. When you put this, if you're putting it into something else that you're cooking with, or you're just heating it up to have for dinner, don't add salt to it because it's already in there. That sodium is already there. Another thing you can do is when you take this out, drain it and then rinse it. When you rinse the vegetables that are in here, that's going to take a lot of that sodium off. Okay, not all of it, but it's going to help some. So rinsing it is helpful. And then, as I already mentioned, select those that are low sodium or no salt added so that you're getting something from the beginning that's a product with less sodium in it. So again, it's the flavor that we like about salt. It's not adding to our nutrition. It's not building all of those things up. So it's the things that we like the taste of. So what are some ways that we can adapt or enhance the taste of the foods that we're eating so that we don't need so much salt or so much sodium? Herbs and spices are a great way to do that. So of course, one of the things that you're going to want to remember when you pick out your herbs and spices, and you can see I am not loyal to any one brand. When we use brands in our videos, we're just using something to symbolize and show you exactly what we're talking about. We're not endorsing any one type for you to use. We're just teaching you how to read the labels. So you can see I use all different types because these are things that I just pulled out of my cabinet to have to show you today. So when we talk about your herbs, dried herbs are going to be stronger than fresh herbs. So if you're growing your own, if you have fresh herbs on hand, if you pick them up in the produce section, you're going to want to use a little more than you would a dried herb out of a container. Okay, because it's just the strength is different. And then, of course, powdered herbs are even stronger than that. So you want to consider when you're putting your stuff together, if a recipe calls for a fresh herb or a powdered herb, you want to adapt that as needed. So 2 teaspoons of a fresh herb, okay, that you've taken fresh from the garden, out of the produce section, chopped it up, is going to be equal to 3/4 to about a teaspoon of dried crumbled herbs. Okay, so almost half. You want to use almost just about half as much of your dried crumbles as you do of your fresh. And then when we talk about powdered herbs, we're going to drop it by half again and only use 1/4 to a half of a teaspoon. And the thing about it with herbs and spices is you may have to experiment a little. You may try it and use your tasting spoon and say, oh, that's not near enough of that, or oh, maybe that's a little more. So add it gradually and in small amounts. But definitely consider, is it fresh, is it dried, or is it a powdered herb that you're using to put that together? So as I mentioned, a lot of people like to grow their own. So if you are growing fresh herbs, of course you want to collect it in the morning right after the dew's gone, before the sun gets too hot during the day. That's when you're going to have it at its best peak for flavor. And obviously we want to use them fresh if at all possible, but sometimes we grow more than we need, or it's got a growing season and we want to have it to use year round. Get the words out there. So you can freeze them, you can dry your own. You want to consider certain herbs do freeze better than others, but chop them up, put them in an individual baggie, and then freeze them, or a small plastic container, and freeze them from there. Or of course, like I said, if you want to dry them, you can put them in bunches, typically on a screen in a warm place, and let them get good and dried out. Most of the time, your dried herbs are going to last about a year once you get them good and dried and you store them properly, which is of course another key piece to what we're doing with our herbs and spices with any type of food, is make sure you've stored them properly. So one of the other struggles that I think a lot of us have with our herbs and spices is when we talk about our meats and our vegetables and what goes with what. I don't know what to use. I'm a big fan of blends that are already put together. This one is an Italian blend, so it has some of those Italian herbs and spices already mixed for you. Again, check the label. Some of these have no salt added. Some of them have salt as well. So if you're buying a blend that already has all of the sodium and salt added to it, you may be defeating your own purpose. So you want to think about that. Read the labels, read the ingredients, and see what's in there. But what do we want to put together? Well, so if you really like French food, you like the French flavors, some of the things you're going to want to look for is bay and chives and basil and fennel is one that a lot of us may not have in our cabinet readily available because we don't always think about that. Oregano, which oregano goes across most of the different ethnic types of dishes we might want to prepare. So that's a great staple to have on hand. Also, still talking about the French flavors, parsley, sage, saffron, some thyme, some tarragon, having those types of things around if those are recipes and flavors that you like. If you would prefer more the Italian flavors, of course, some basil. We're going to look at, again, oregano, rosemary, sage, savory, and the thyme again will be in that one as well. And then around here, a lot of what we talk about are our Mexican flavors for our Mexican dishes. And so cinnamon, coriander, the cumin, I have some of that here somewhere, garlic, your hot peppers, and then again, oregano is going to come back around for that too. So when we talk about the different types of dishes we like, maybe you go to a certain type of restaurant and you really like it, but you can't figure out what that flavor is. Number one, you can always ask them, but here's a great little breakdown. And so again, look in your newsletter this month. We're going to have some of that information for you. And then think about, what do you want it to go on? If we're talking about poultry and eggs, of course, everything, garlic goes with everything. I'm a firm believer in that. Oregano, we've seen a lot. Rosemary is wonderful with chicken. We hear about rosemary chicken all the time. Sage is another great thing. I grew up with my grandmother and mom making sage stuffing to go with the turkey for Thanksgiving because those flavors just seem to go really well together. And then, of course, beef. We're in beef country and we like to eat beef. So hot pepper, rosemary is also good with beef. Your bay, your chives, cloves can add a really great flavor, bring out the taste of your beef. And then, of course, eggs, like I said, basil, dillweed, some parsley is always good in your eggs. And then pork. Black pepper is one that we recommend with pork. And again, I know some people who put black pepper on absolutely everything, which of course is still a better choice than putting more salt in everything and upping your sodium. Ginger, hot peppers, garlic, and again, some sage are going to be excellent additions to your pork as well. So the key thing is to just think about what are some other flavors that I can add so that salt is not such a necessity. Read the label, know how much sodium you're taking and putting into things, because it's going to help you feel better to not be putting so much sodium into your body. And again, it's really going to help with high blood pressure that can lead to heart disease and cause other health issues. So great conversation to have with your doctor. And when he says, don't eat so much sodium, here's some alternatives, some things that you can think about to cut back on that. Again, this month we are recommending a couple of, I can't get them picked up, publications from New Mexico State University and the Cooperative Extension Service, Healthy Habits for Healthy Weight in Childhood, a guide for parents. There's some great tips in here about putting together meals and planning that do apply even to adults, not just children. And then, of course, nutrition facts for better meals, some adjustments you can make. So again, thinking about healthy tips, small, simple changes we can make to feel better, to be healthier. I'm Mindy Turner with the Curry County Cooperative Extension Service. If you'd like to get signed up for that newsletter or ask a question from our office, curryextension.nmsu.edu. You can go online, click on Family Health and Wellness. There's a place to submit to receive a newsletter by email or hard copy in the mail, or to submit a question. And as always, you can call us with your questions and more information that you need. We'll be glad to send you copies of the newsletter or any of the publications that we talk about so that you don't have to get online or you don't have to print those yourself. I hope you're having a wonderful week. Make a small change to make yourself feel better. Thank you.